when the Ukraine-Russia conflict first happened, I saw a lot of people. I'm not going to say any names, and Reese, we've talked about this. I saw a lot of people, black folks, saying, "Well, Vladimir Putin really isn't the enemy," and Vladimir Putin has said good things about countries in Africa. I saw a narrative out there about somehow Vladimir Putin is, some folks are framing him as an ally. And that was really disturbing to hear. And Reese, we talked about it ad nauseum. Remember, Ted Johnson came on, talked about it ad nauseum. But you, as somebody who does the research and does the work of what's of that intersection, can you break down to us why Putin is not a friend to black folks in America or on the continent?
How much time do we have? So the biggest, and I saw that too. And like I've lived in Ukraine and I've worked on Russia since I was 18 years old. So this is all my adult life has been working on the region. And Russia, when it was as Russia and when it was the leader of the former Soviet Union, Russia has used black suffering to launder its reputation as a decolonial and anti-racist state. So while like Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, he was doing a trip around Africa a couple of weeks ago, his country is maintaining a war that prevents grain from leaving Ukraine that will be going to the global south. But also, if you Google racist attacks on Africans in Russia, you will be horrified by what you see. So the same time we had the Black Lives Matter protests in the United States in the summer of 2020, you had Russians making fun of African Americans, making fun of George Floyd across Russian social media channels. Vladimir Putin even said no such types of protests that ever happened in Russia. Um, there are regular reports of Africans and Afro-Russians who are, discriminated against. People won't rent apartments to them. They can't travel around at night. So there are significant problems with anti-Black racism and violence in Russia. But what Russia does, and I mean, literally from the 60s, when African students were being beaten up in the USSR, is it turns towards the continent and it turns towards African Americans and it uses our suffering and our very real lived experiences with anti-Black violence to make itself look better. But this is cynical. In no way, shape, or form does Vladimir Putin believe that Black Lives Matter, because if he did, he wouldn't be supporting alt-right and far-right nationalist groups in Russia who have ties to those very same groups in Hungary, in Poland, and in the United States. It's a facade, and we should not allow him to get away with it.
Well said. And I just, it confuses me. I'm like, how did this, I mean, Reese, we talk about this disinformation. How did this even flood
Yeah.
into people who are considered to be influential voices? How did y'all get on the Vladimir Putin train? I mean, I'm confused how y'all make it on the Trump train.
Yeah.
But the Putin train?
That's a whole nother bridge too far.
That's a
But
whole
I mean,
other...
the Mueller report talked about how Russia targets the Black community with disinformation. So people don't have to take my word for it. The whole ass special prosecutor said this. There is a lot of data about this. And that campaign never stopped. It's still ongoing because they get a huge bang for their buck by targeting us. And they don't do it. They don't have Sergei Lavrov out there on Twitter making videos or on Instagram making reels. They have people that look like us who are receiving it from inauthentic sources usually, but take it and run with it because it has an appeal to it. It's taking advantage of our grievances, our very real grievances, to turn us against the society or turn us against the system that we need to be very much engaged in, that we are much more engaged in. And that engagement is what's a danger to Russia. So that's why we're targeted. And it's never stopped. And it's never going to stop until we make it not so profitable for them. If they're not getting a return on their investment, then they're not going to do it.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Before you leave, is there anything else that we should know about Brittney Griner and her sentencing? Anything else we should be aware of that we're kind of missing the mark on? Anything?
I think the key thing is to be patient, particularly when it comes to expecting a prisoner exchange. As was just said, Russia thrives off of internal problems in the United States. Midterms are coming up, and Brittney's already a lightning rod with people saying she should be locked up or she shouldn't be locked up. and as they get more and more influence about this prisoner exchange, is going to continue to split people. And that just works towards Russia's benefit. So think about Americans, think about 2 Americans who have been wrongfully detained for part of a political firestorm that they should not be a part of. And we just need to provide support to the Biden administration to bring them home.
I have one more question.
But
Can I
please,
answer?
please.
I've been seeing, and I won't ask a loaded question. I've been seeing people saying that this exchange, because of what Victor Bout is in jail for, as opposed to what Brittney is in jail for, makes Biden look weak. Can you give your thoughts on that? Like I said, I'm not going to give you a loaded question. I'll just say, can you give your thoughts on it? On that particular thing.
I've seen that too. I don't think it makes Biden look weak, because being weak would be doing nothing. Paul Whelan and Trevor Reed were in prison for years under Trump, and we did nothing.
Thank you.
So I don't think it's a matter of weakness. I think it's a matter of understanding. The sooner he gets Brittney Griner and Paul Whelan out, these two hugely, people in America know about them. How do we think that's going to affect American policy towards Ukraine? We can strengthen our policy in support of Ukraine because we don't have Americans being held as pawns in Russia. We can also strengthen our sanctions regime. And I have no doubt that Russia understands that. So I don't think it's a matter of weakness at all. And I don't think if you frame it that way, there is never a reason to negotiate with Russia if you think we're coming at it from from a part of weakness. But I don't think that's what this is.
Before you go, I have to ask you, I'm afraid to even look at Russia on a map. Like, I am so uncomfortable with Russia. Actually, I'm also nervous about Greece, too. Greece has its own anti-Black history, you know what I'm saying? But what made you get interested? I mean, you said you were in Ukraine at 18 years old. I'm all them countries I'm scared of. So I'm just curious to know what I'm being real. Folks say, oh, let's go on a trip. I ain't going anywhere in that area. They don't like it. They don't like us. But what made you get involved? This work is so important. I'm so happy you're doing it. But what made you get involved in this?
So I've been fascinated by Russia and the Soviet Union since I was in 5th grade. I watched a lot of History Channel. So I was like, oh, this place called Russia. It's like Texas. That's the way I thought about it. It was big, people, and everyone has like their Texas nationalism, there's Russian nationalism. But I started studying it when I was an undergrad. My first course I ever signed up for was the Soviet history course. And since then, I've been fascinated by it. But my work now on like the Black experience in the region comes from when I was doing research in Ukraine in 2013 for my master's degree. I met an Afro-Ukrainian, and I was like, what do you mean you're Black and you're from Ukraine? Like, how does that work? And that's when I learned that, there are Black people in Ukraine, there are Black people in Russia, but also that African Americans have a long history in the region. And so my work has been to really show that Blackness, the diaspora, is everywhere, that we have a place everywhere. And also to show that the sooner we understand in America that anti-Black racism is a foreign policy and national security problem. And until we understand that, Russia will continue to do what it's been doing, just taking advantage of that to weaken us. So I think what's happened is my research has suddenly become important, unfortunately because of Brittney's trial. But hopefully through my work, I can, help prevent this from happening again. But yeah, I definitely understand though. Like going to Russia is not high on my list, and I have to do it for my dissertation research. But yeah, my parents are like, why don't you just do like American history? Yeah.
Well, it's important for us to be in all spaces, and we can all do a variety of things. So that's really powerful. That's really powerful.